without further ado, it's time for our next set of quarterback rankings, number 15 through 11. It's going down right now. And this, set right here is what I call on the verge of being elite, right? If I put you in this group right here, what I'm telling the people is that I believe you're going to be an MVP dark horse. Okay, you may not be in my top 10. I don't may think you're going to win it, but you're going to be a dark horse for MVP, and you're right there at the cusp of being elite. And Zach, as we do every week, new listeners that listen to the show, we want to dive into our criterias. And Zach, I'll start off with you, and then you could go ahead because you up today first, and then I'll go after you.
Yeah, well, no doubt. So there's no denying for me that my list is pretty unique, right? I'm not a guy that just looks at your resume and what you've done up to this point, and that's how I'm ranking you. No, like for me, a lot of this list is expecting how you're going to do this year. I totally understand that recent sample size matters. And of course, I incorporated that into my list. I totally understand that your resume and what you've done up to this point matters. But I also take a lot in how do I think you're going to do this season, because those are the games we're about to watch. Training camp for this season is underway, and we know that we've been doing this list a few years now, and there are names that have just moved from top to bottom to all over the place, just moving their way around the list, and that is because of everything they've done on the field. So we both follow this league very closely. We both have our instincts about how certain guys are going to do this season, and for me, that matters a lot in my list. And I won't recap my whole thing. We're going to have updated graphics up sooner rather than later, but I'll just give you guys the 5 names I handed out last week when we did this, numbers 20 through 16, because really this, in my opinion, is where the list really started. That we have the rookies, we have guys that are journeyman veterans that we're not even that confident will play the full season. But I felt like last week when we ranked our quarterbacks number 20 through 15, that really began for me the guys that are proven in this league, the guys that are actually pretty good. And it also just shows you the depth and overall quality of this position. I know last year we had a lot of injuries and some bad luck, but this is a very deep position. And there are about 20 guys that if they were my quarterback, I would be feeling pretty confident with that entering this season. So to recap what I had last week, I had Kirk Cousins at number 20, Tua Tagovailoa at number 19, Baker Mayfield at number 18, Jordan Love at number 17, and we had Anthony Richardson of the Colts at number 16. So without further ado, Will, you ready? It's time to get into my list for today. All right. At number 15, and Will, I'm curious with the graphic if you have this guy at number 15 too, but he's the graphic, so I might as well get into it right away. I'm going to go with Kyler Murray of the Cardinals coming in at number 15. And anyone who has listened to me on this show long enough knows, I've been pretty tough and pretty critical of Kyler in the past. And a big reason for that is because there's really just nothing more I hate than wasted talent. And we know that when you look at Kyler Murray's overall talent, it's through the roof. This guy has such a high ceiling. But I really do believe that after the Cardinals decided to fire Cliff Kingsbury, there were a lot of possible head coaches that just flat out didn't want to come to Arizona and coach this guy. I think a lot of that had to do with the video games and the fact that the Cardinals paid Kyler prematurely. I don't think he really did enough to warrant that big contract. But I vividly remember what people were saying about Jonathan Gannon after his defense gave up 35 points in the Super Bowl. I thought that last year at this time, there was a good chance that Arizona was going to be the worst team in the entire NFL. They reminded me a lot of the tank for Tua, Brian Flores Dolphins. But I thought
tank for Caleb.
Yeah, exactly. We thought the Cardinals were going to be Caleb's team. But I thought Kyler played very well last year coming off the injury. And Will, I'll tell you, sometimes the great things in life happen when you don't necessarily expect them to. I actually think Arizona is going to have one of the best offenses in the entire league this season. I love drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's going to be an all-time great player. I love Trey McBride as a tight end. I think he's a star in the making. I also think James Conner was phenomenal last season running the football. And I'll say this, guys, to everyone listening. Just remember the name Drew Petzing. He is currently the Cardinals offensive coordinator. He came from Cleveland, where he was the Browns quarterback coach in 2022, and he helped make Jacoby Brissett look really good when he was filling in for Deshaun Watson. I think at this time next year, Drew Petzing is going to be a head coach in this league, and I think Kyler Murray is about to have a really big season under his watch. I will have Kyler at number 15. I will continue the string of quarterbacks in the NFC West at number 14. I'm going to go with Matthew Stafford of the Rams. And I thought Stafford played really well last season when I honestly thought there was a chance he could be done after the injuries he suffered the year prior and he was getting older. But the fact that him and Sean McVay were able to lead the Rams back to the playoffs after everything that went wrong for them the year prior and all of the question marks that we had about the Rams going into last season, I thought was pretty impressive. The fact that Stafford turned Puka Nacua from a guy that was a 5th-round pick to one of the best and most productive wide receivers in football, I think that shows that Stafford still has that quarterback gift that not really a lot of other guys have, and that's just the ability to make guys around him better and elevate them. And I do think that Matthew Stafford is a Hall of Famer, and he will see himself in Canton one day. My only concern, though, is, and why I have him a little bit low, probably compared to consensus, is just the injuries and the age. Like, this is a guy that really dating back to his days in Detroit has taken so many big hits, and he's been playing a long time. And I just hope that doesn't slow him down. The Rams, for me, are one of the most difficult teams in the NFL to predict because after everything they did last season, I do have a pretty hard time doubting Matthew Stafford and doubting Sean McVay. But then you remember, like, Aaron Donald retired, which is obviously a huge loss. Like, he's an all-time great player. And again, I just hope Stafford could stay upright, stay healthy, and play with that athleticism even at the age of 36. Because my lasting memory of Matthew Stafford in that playoff game the Rams lost to against the Lions, he was very good in that game. He just stood in the pocket and made a ton of big throws, but he just took so many big hits. And we know that Rams offensive line isn't really their strength. And Stafford, again, just took a lot of big hits in Detroit. So I just hope he could stay healthy. I hope he could stay upright. I'll have him at number 14. At number 13, I'm staying in the NFC West once again. And I'm going to go with Brock Purdy of the 49ers at number 13. And I know there's always a lot of debate around Brock Purdy, right? He's super polarizing. But for me, I think the conversation around him is kind of frustrating at times because I feel like whenever I hear people talk about him, it's either he's a top 5 quarterback in the league and he should have won MVP last year, or he stinks, and the only reason he's good is because of the Kyle Shanahan system. And I'll say I'm somewhere in between. I think that it's a clear-cut fact that Brock Purdy is the best quarterback we've ever seen run this Kyle Shanahan offense. But we also know that this is a super friendly quarterback offense, and the numbers say that if you take one of his top weapons away, right, whether it's Christian McCaffrey, whether it's Trent Williams, whether it's Ayuk, whether it's Samuel, if you just take one of those guys away, then the numbers drop. We know the 49ers, the only time last year they really struggled was when Trent Williams got hurt in the middle of the season, and they lost 3 games in a row. We also know what's been going on with Brandon Ayuk and his contract situation. He reported to camp, but he's not really participating in any of the workouts. But now Trent Williams is holding out. He hasn't reported to camp, and he wants more money also. I think that's a concern. I'll say it's not that I'm not a Purdy believer, just a question I have about him. There are a lot of them. Like, I like the fact that he was able to come back from that deficit in the NFC Championship game. That was one question we really had about him. Is he able to come back from a large deficit? He did that. And I also thought he played well enough in the Super Bowl for San Francisco to win that game. But I also wouldn't feel great if I was the 49ers just making him one of the best and highest paid quarterbacks in the league. Like, I don't know how comfortable I would feel about that. I feel like if I own the 49ers, I said this last week, I would lock Kyle Shanahan in a room and ask him, can you find the next Brock Purdy and do the exact same thing you did with him if it meant we could keep Brandon Ayuk and keep Trent Williams? I'll just say this to close. I think if Brock Purdy played for another team, if he played for the Bills or if he played for the Chargers, I just don't think he'd be having nearly the same success as he's having right now in San Francisco, which is why I would feel pretty nervous about paying him. But nonetheless, this guy, for someone that was drafted with the last pick of the draft, he's turned himself into a really good player. I think number 13 is just about right, and that's where I'll have him, Brock Purdy, at number 13. At number 12, yes, Finally, I will go with Caleb Williams of the Chicago Bears, the number one pick. And I'll just say this. Yeah, we're coming in here. I understand that this might be a little high for a guy that hasn't played a single snap in the NFL yet, right? I totally get it. But I think the rating here is justified. We've seen guys like Andrew Luck and Trevor Lawrence come into the NFL with the same amount of hype as Caleb Williams. But the difference was the situations that they were in were just not good. Like, in the season before the Jaguars drafted Trevor Lawrence, they lost 15 games in a row. Like, they beat the Colts week 1, and then they didn't win another game the rest of the season. And then they followed that up by hiring Urban Meyer, one of the worst probably the worst head coach we've ever seen coach in the NFL. And that's how they brought Trevor Lawrence in. The Colts, before they drafted Andrew Luck, they only won 2 games, and that's what got them the number 1 pick. But I think this Bears team and this situation around Caleb Williams is so different. This is a team that won 7 games last season, and they upgraded at quarterback. They upgraded at running back. They upgraded at wide receiver 2. They upgraded at wide receiver 3. And most importantly, they upgraded at offensive coordinator. And when people try to criticize Caleb and say, oh, USC, they weren't good last year. Why does this guy have so much hype when USC, they lost 5 games last season. They were a top 10 team that should have made the college football playoff. Well, my response to that is, did you see their offensive line? It was terrible. Did you see their defense? It was even worse. USC gave up nearly 30 points per game last season. And the only reason why the Bears have this number 1 pick was because they made the trade with Carolina that I think will go down as one of the best trades and biggest fleeces in the history of the NFL if Caleb Williams turns into the player I expect him to be. I just think this situation is the best we've seen a number 1 pick ever go into, and I think it's going to translate in wins this year. I'm going to say it right now. I think this season is a massive failure for the Bears if they don't make the playoffs and improve on that 7-win season that they had last year. I will have Caleb Williams at number 12. And at number 11, to close out my list, I just mentioned him when talking about Caleb. I'm going to go with Trevor Lawrence of the Jaguars. I'm going to have him at number 11. And I'll say this, I totally understand that Trevor didn't really play that well at the end of last season. But I think also we're forgetting what exactly happened leading up to that point. Yeah, they hired Urban Meyer before they drafted Trevor. Probably, again, the worst head coach in the history of the NFL. I think when evaluating Trevor Lawrence, you throw that season completely out the window. In his second year, the Jaguars, they started 2-6. And then they went on to finish that regular season 7-2, and they won the AFC South. Then in the playoffs, Trevor Lawrence helps lead the biggest comeback in the history of the playoffs against the Chargers. And then the next week, the Jaguars were very competitive in the divisional round of the playoffs against the Chiefs, the team that, has won the last 2 Super Bowls in their building. The Jaguars competed in that game. They were right there. Then you go to the beginning of last year, the Jaguars started the season 8-3. It looked like at one point they could get the number 1 seed in the AFC. But then Trevor suffered that brutal ankle injury on Monday Night Football against the Bengals. Like, I remember watching that vividly, thinking to myself, like, shoot, did he just break his foot? And I remember when they showed the replay, the crowd groaned, like they thought he was dead. And remember, there was that whole controversy that the Jaguars didn't bring out the cart for him, and they made him walk it off. They made him walk off the field. I just thought that when that play happened, he might have been out for the year. I thought it could have been a devastating injury. And although he wasn't that good to close out last season, there is a 24-game stretch from the middle of 2022 to the middle of last season where the Jaguars went 16-6 in 24 games started by Trevor Lawrence. I just think we're forgetting about that. I think he's a guy that's going to have a massive bounce back season. I trust Doug Peterson to get the most out of him. And I also think Calvin Ridley is going to be an addition by subtraction. He was terrible last year. If he just catches a few balls here and there, I think last season could have gone totally different for this Jaguars team. I love drafting Brian Thomas Jr. in the first round from LSU. I like picking up Gabe Davis from Buffalo. I think a trio of Christian Kirk, Gabe Davis, and Brian Thomas is pretty good to pair with Lawrence and a pretty good running back in ETN. I think I like those group of weapons. So I'm going to invest in the Jaguars to bounce back. I know there's been a lot of controversy about Lawrence and the deal he got, but he had that 24-game stretch when he went 16-6. He won a playoff game. He led the biggest comeback in the history of the NFL playoffs. He went toe for toe with Mahomes in a playoff game in Arrowhead, I think that's a deal if you're the Jaguars that you give out every time. I will have Trevor at number 11. So to recap my list so far for today, 15 to 11, I had Kyler Murray of the Cardinals at number 15. We had Matthew Stafford of the Rams at number 14. Brock Purdy of the 49ers at number 13. Caleb Williams of the Bears at number 12. And finally, Trevor Lawrence of the Jags at number 11. Lil, I'll hand the mic over to you.
Yeah, definitely. I do want to get to my list, and then I want to respond to yours. Obviously, the last two, I want to talk about. So I'm going to come back to that. And Zach, if I forget, which I'm pretty sure I'm not, just remind me after I'm done with my lap that I want to talk on Trevor Lawrence and Caleb Williams. But folks, for those of y'all who are tuning in for the first time and watching this show, obviously you heard Zach's criteria for his rankings. That would explain some of the questionable picks that he made, like Caleb Williams being that high. Obviously, he made his criteria apparent, and I'm gonna do the same here. For me, obviously the eye test matters, right? With my own two eyes, these are the 32 best quarterbacks in football, but it's not as simple as that, right? Yes, we respect your resume, but at the end of the day, it's about projecting. I call myself Nostradamus, okay? I do. Why? Because I try to be ahead of the curve. I know the world is going to end soon, okay? I really do, on a philosophical level. Prepare yourselves, right? But I also know that there's going to be quarterbacks who's going to break out. And I may have them higher than quarterbacks we deem to be guys that we like, okay? So be on the lookout for that. And obviously, you got to start or at least play 70% of your games. Obviously, if you're ranked this high, you're going to be starting week 1. All right. So to recap the last week's set, I'm going to do like Zach. At number 20, and you could obviously on Instagram, social media, YouTube, check out the rest of the rankings that we've done thus far, counting from 32 all the way up to where we are today. Last week at number 20, I do not remember who I had at number 20. Yes, I do. I believe I had Caleb Williams. No. Deshaun Watson at number 20. Excuse me, right? 19, I had Baker Mayfield. Number 18, I had Geno Smith. Number 17, I had Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. And number 16, I had Trevor Lawrence. Where Zach ended off this week is why I ended off last week with Trevor. Now, at number 15, I'm going to go with Kirk Cobain's, okay? Or should I say Kirk Chains, a.k.a. Kirk Cousins. How you doing, cousin? Let's talk about him. Look, if he wasn't coming off an Achilles injury at the age of 35, 36, he had a case to be in my top 10 after last year's season. He played like a top 5 quarterback last year. I'll give him his respect, even though we come at this guy for his playoff woes like we do Dak Prescott. Last year, I really felt if he was healthy, the Vikings was arguably the scariest team in the NFC. Now, you look at his situation right now, obviously, guaranteed money. You got to pay the man what he wants. Okay, he was the one that set the precedent with the $84 million fully guaranteed. He wasn't taking anything different. Okay, we know his flow. You didn't want to pay him the dough, and now he's out the door. And now he's with the Falcons. And I think when you look at this team, there's a lot to like because guys like Kyle Pitts, guys like Drake London, B. John Robinson, they haven't been able to reach, the maximum potential that we know these guys have, okay, because of quarterback play, quarterback incompetence, because of questionable play calling, okay? Like I said with Arthur Smith, the guy thinks he's the smartest man in the room, like he know what he's doing. He don't. So you combine the play calling along with the quarterback incompetence, of course, guys are not going to reach their, ceilings. Kyle Pitts, I remember we was talking about this dude, the greatest tight end of all time coming out the draft. Nowhere close. Fantasy, stay away. Okay, you are no longer my fantasy because I am not playing you in fantasy. And the case could go for every other Falcons player. No, I mean, B-John probably was different, but even then we got frustrated with B-John in fantasy, right? But let's leave fantasy and let's come back to real life because real life, Kirk Cousins is going to come in here and he's going to be like Moses and he's going to lead these group of pass catchers who are starving to prove that they are legitimate pass catchers. Even my guy, Darnell Mooney, You could add him to this equation, even though he's new to the team, because he was dealing with quarterback incompetence in Chicago with Justin Fields. Can't see the daggone field. Respect to Justin Fields. But I got to be real with you, bruh. Okay? Andy Dalton, Nick Foles. Okay? Nick Foley. I'm going to call him Nick Foley because he phony. Okay? And Darnell Mooney was dealing with the same thing. Now, guess what? Like Moses, leading the Israelites out of bondage, that's Kirk Cousins for the Falcons. I don't know if they're going to go to the Super Bowl. I'm not going to bank on that happening. But what I will say is that they will win the NFC South. Or they should be the favorites to win the NFC South. I don't want to give my prediction away. I need content here. All right.
They are, by the way. Vegas does have them as the favorite.
Vegas believes in them, yeah. I agree. And look, Kirk Cousins individually, solid quarterback. He doesn't have the strongest arm, but he could rip the football. You know, he's just a gamer. That's what he is. He's a gamer. He's going to come in there, and he's going to do exactly what he did with Minnesota before he had the Achilles injury. And I like him at number 15. And now we're going to go on to number 14. Okay? Salute to my guy. You know, yeah, we'll welcome you back when you come back. At number 14, I'm going to go with Tua Tagovailoa. I'm going to go with him at number 14. Quick release, accuracy, his best attributes, right? And he's good at throwing in the middle of the field, thus being good at, going against zone coverage, right? Because when you could attack the middle of the field with the short passing game, the intermediate, parts of the field, then you could attack the zone. And he's a very good quarterback against the zone, right? But, I think when assessing him, it's similar to assessing a guy like Brock Purdy in the sense that a lot of people think that Tua is a system quarterback. We get the same label with a guy like Brock Purdy. And I think their situations are similar in the sense that we know that with Kyle Shanahan, without Jimmy G, when Jimmy G was quarterbacking the team, they were losing, right? Without Jimmy G, they were losing because that wasn't the right quarterback to operate the system, right? And then it was like that until they landed Brock Purdy. And Brock Purdy was a modified Jimmy G that could do a little bit more than Jimmy G, right? So you look at Tua, it's the same thing. When Tua's not there, the offense doesn't function right. So although we could label these guys, Brock Purdy and Tua, obviously I ain't talking about Brock Purdy yet, okay? But although we could name Brock Purdy and Tua system quarterbacks, they are the system. Because without them, the system won't work, okay? So we have to be mindful of that. So they do have a level of, okay, I'm bringing something to the table. And I can say the same thing about Tua. Now, the one thing that I don't like about Tua, right, and I thought he played a little bit more careful. He wasn't as reckless, but he also puts his receivers in harm's way. I don't remember the exact plays, but I remember last year watching about 4 to 5 Dolphins games where at least one time I was like, yo, you almost got your receiver killed, bro. Okay? Like, yeah, you had your injuries a couple seasons ago. You almost got your guy hurt like that. You got to be careful when, throwing the football and making sure you protect your wide receiver as well as get the ball to your wide receiver. That's a skill, and that's a morale thing from a quarterback, right? Stop trying to be, stat man, okay? Make sure you look out for your wide receiver. Don't let him get his head taken off, okay? So I think he needs to work on that. But other than that, people are going to say what they want. I just think when it comes down to January, he got to show up, and the Dolphins got to show up. I trust in Mike McDaniel. The thing that I like about the Dolphins last year that was very different from year one under Mike McDaniel is that they got the running game going with Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert. He had a, breakout year, Raheem Mostert, even though he had breakout moments in the past prior to injury. The fact that he was so beaten down throughout his career and to get a retro year like how he did last year where he just kept scoring. And then you got A-Chain. I mean, this guy's averaging like 4 or 5 yards a pop. I mean, this offense going to be hard to stop if they continue that. So that was very different from 2 years ago where they couldn't run the football. They unlocked the running game. And I'm curious to see what else Mike McDaniel is going to be able to unlock this year with this new version of the Dolphins. So I like Tua at number 14. At number 13, this is where, folks, a lot of y'all may tune out after this. with all due respect, it is what it is. Because I'm going to talk my stuff today. Okay, this is going to be very controversial. I'm not going to lie. I played it cool thus far with my rankings, right? I played it cool. But now I'm going for the gold here. And I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts at number 13 on my list. Okay, understand that's going to be low for a lot of people. I'm going to explain. Now, I do believe that Hurts has the athletic ability. He has an upside that makes it debatable that he should be a top 10 quarterback. You know, he's accurate on a deep ball, but I think he has issues throwing in the middle of the field. I think he has issues with processing what he's seeing in the middle of the field or in the field in general. Okay, because when you look at the numbers last year, there was only one quarterback that had a worse processing time. Okay, and that was Justin Fields last year. Okay, so Kellen Moore's job is going to be to get Hurts to be a full field processor. And if he can do that, then I think there's room to grow here with Hurts, and he will probably skyrocket a little bit higher up these rankings. Okay, I really do think he has to be a better passer of the football. Obviously, a lot of people is going to flock back to a couple years ago when they went on that magical run and they almost won the Super Bowl, arguably should have. But last year, I did not like what I saw last year. And it's not all Hurts' fault. Okay, it's not, because what the offense couldn't do, what Nick Sirianni and company couldn't do last year, was attack the blitzes. Okay, every team knew how to defend the Eagles last year. Blitz Hurts. That's it. And they wasn't able to combat that, so they kept, throwing the ball down the field with low percentage throws to combat the blitz. No, you can't do it like that. You got to run the football. You got to throw some screens. You got to be more creative. Okay, so I think Kellen Moore is the X factor here. Lot to prove. He had 1 or 2 good years with the Cowboys, and we ready to write this guy as the new profound, Don Dada play calling. He got to show something, because last year with Justin Herbert, he couldn't even get him going. And so I wonder if he can fix Hurts. I wonder if that's a good fit. Okay, so we'll see. I got Hurts at number 13. At number 12, I'm going to go with the guy you see here. I'm going to go with Kyler Murray. Last year, he returned from an ACL injury at week 10. Okay, week 10, last season. Didn't have full knowledge of the playbook because the offense changed, right? Didn't have that camaraderie with his guys, right? And yet, he come in there in the final 4 games of last year, not even healthy fully. He completed 70.3% of his passes for 935 yards, 7 touchdowns to only 3 interceptions. In that span, the Cardinals led the league, okay, in yards per game, 414.3 yards per game. Okay, this guy was at 100%. Okay, but it showed you that immediately in his first game back, when he was able to make guys miss, okay, like they was dodging raindrops and hand grenades and all of that. Oh my God, breaking ankles. It showed you that this guy is a certified gamer. He don't got to learn the playbook right now. Obviously, he's going to be able to do that. That's why I'm ranking him so high, because he has a full offseason program to get with the program, to understand the program. And now I believe he's going to do so. I believe he's going to be healthy. And man, I think the Cardinals, listen, if you ask me today, who is a dark horse MVP candidate that nobody's talking about, right? We all got our guys, our 5 to 6 guys we'll go with. But give me an outside the box, number 1, under the radar MVP candidate. Kyler Murray is that guy. I think he showed you that he has the athleticism of a Lamar Jackson, in the sense that he's able to make guys miss like Lamar Jackson. He doesn't win as much as Lamar Jackson, obviously. I hope that changes this year. But then you get guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., who was a wide receiver who can win at all 3 levels of the football field, can do it all. I think he's going to hit the gate running. Trey McBride is going to be a superstar tight end in the making. I'm a firm believer in him. I like Zay Jones. That's a good pickup right there as your number 2. And I believe Kyler is going to make it do what it do. I do believe that this year they're going to take off, and we're going to look at Kyler and be like, all right, this was the Kyler that we wanted to see coming out of college, who won the Heisman Trophy. I like him at number 12. And to cap off my list, I'm going to stay in the division. I'm going to go with Brock Purdy. Okay? Now, I said this before on other shows, that he was the hardest quarterback for me to rank here in this whole entire list, because you look at the numbers, the statistics. it shows that he's a top 10 quarterback. But from a talent perspective, he doesn't have the strongest arm. He's not the most dual threat guy. Now, I do believe he knows how to operate the pocket really well, because a lot of people confuse mobility with pocket awareness. He has good pocket awareness. He's able to get out of situations, but he's not mobile. A little bit mobile. He might sprinkle something in there, but he's not athletic. Okay, but he's able to get out of danger. So that's a good thing to have to, complement what he could do, passing the ball, getting the ball out quick. So the talent, you look at the talent, that's not a top 10 quarterback. So I think by me ranking Purdy and how high I ranked him compared to most, some people may have him lower than me. Zach has him lower than me. It really defines my list and what I prioritize. It really was going to be the microcosm. I said, wherever I put him, it's going to be the microcosm of my list. And the reason why I have him at number 11 is because I think he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in football this year. It's plain and simple. Say what you want, system, quarterback, he is a system, whatever. You go ahead, right? I just believe flat out that he's going to be one of the top 11 quarterbacks in the NFL. I believe he's going to be an MVP candidate as well. And there's a lot of guys who I believe, is going to be an MVP candidate as well. So, quick point here that I want to bring up. I thought in the playoffs, he showed me something last year, in games like the Packers, when he had to scramble for some first downs on third down, showed, grit and determination. I remember that game, the weather was looking spooky. He couldn't even grip the football, right? And that's another thing that, he really can't play in all types of situations like other guys probably can. But he still led a gritty game-winning drive, against the Lions. He made some gritty winning plays as well. And those little stints really impressed me to the point where I couldn't disrespect this guy and put him any lower than 11. So to recap my list, at number 15, I got Kirk Cousins. At number 14, I got Tua Tagovailoa. At number 13, I got Kyler Murray. At number 12, I got Kyler Murray. Excuse me. At number 12, I got Kyler Murray. Jalen Hurts at 13. And at number 11, I got my guy Brock Purdy.
All right, well, since you just finished off, I'll throw a couple questions your way, and then you could get into mine. I'll start off with a quick question on Purdy. In our next segment, I'll tease it. We're going to be talking about quarterbacks that are due for a big payday and what we would do in that team situation. And even though Purdy isn't really going to be one of the three quarterbacks we're focusing on in that segment, he is a guy that could have qualified as well, because most likely after this year, the 49ers are going to work something out. And I think, you even said it, Purdy was the hardest guy to put on your list. And, I had him a little bit lower than you. I had him at 13, you had him at 11. But I think overall we're in the same range and our feelings on him are similar. But him being one of the 11 best quarterbacks in the league this season aside, how do you feel about the position San Francisco is in? And would you feel comfortable making him one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league? Because to be honest, even though the numbers say that he might be, I will never take this guy seriously as an MVP candidate. We went through the song and dance last year. The situation around him is too good. And I don't want to disrespect him. He is a very good quarterback. And I agree. He made some really nice plays and had some great moments in the playoffs. But the thing that keeps creeping in the back of my mind is the fact that if you just take one of his Avengers away, if the 49ers are going to lose Brandon Ayuk, which they're more than likely are after this year, if Trent Williams gets old and retires soon, he's 36, that's likely. He's still somehow one of the best left tackles in the game, but we know that when he got hurt last year, this 49ers offense looked different, and it fell off a cliff. This team's window for a championship isn't going to be open forever. We've spoken a lot about this on this show. How do you feel about Brock Purdy being one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league? And if you were in San Francisco's shoes, do you think he is valuable enough to put him in that position? Because if I'm running the 49ers, I would be picking Kyle Shanahan's brain. I would be asking him, Kyle, we don't feel great about paying this guy all of this money. Do you think you could find another guy like you did with Purdy and turn him into something similar? Because again, I think if you put Brock Purdy on the Buffalo Bills in a little bit of a worse situation, a lot of a bit worse situation, actually, if you put him in LA with Justin Herbert, where he's been, where are those results? And I just worry then in a few years, San Francisco isn't going to have Deebo Samuel. They're not going to have Christian McCaffrey in his prime. They're not going to have Brandon Ayuk. And that's when Purdy's production could really fall off a cliff. I'm not trying to disrespect him. I think he's much better than anyone could have ever thought he was. The fact that we have a guy that was the last pick in the NFL draft right outside the top 10 in your case of our quarterback list. He's obviously very good and he could play, but is San Francisco, would they be making the right decision to commit to him like that?
I mean, for starters, just for clarification, Brock Purdy cannot play in Buffalo. He can't grip the football in bad weather. Just wanted to throw that out there. So, yeah, I agree. Clearly, he won't be good in Buffalo. He's not a guy that you want playing in bad weather. But I think it's a good question, all in all, because obviously Kyle Shanahan has that label of being a quarterback guru. And a lot of people think his system is very quarterback friendly, which it is, if you just watch how everything opens up. But at the same time, asking him to really go on a journey to find another guy like that, I think it's going to be a tough, tall task because, not every guy is like that. Who they drafted high and traded up for to get? Trey Lance. And, everybody was cool with it because it's like, all right, it's Kyle Shanahan. Trey Lance has some mobile upside. We could, Kyle Shanahan could, toy around with him a little bit. That's going to be a good fit because we believe that you just throwing any quarterback in there and they're going to be good. He has a strong arm and all that. But guess what? It didn't work. That wasn't a guy that could perfectly operate in his system. Yeah, I still think that Trey Lance may have some potential, but his strengths doesn't align with Kyle Shanahan and what he wants to do and how he wants to run his offense. So I just don't think you can go and take another dive to try to land another gem. I think if Brock Purdy shows you that he is your guy by having another good year, then he should be a guy going forward and you should pay that guy. Understand that financially things could get really tricky. You're talking about top of the line value, resetting the quarterback market more than likely. But if you got to do it, you got to do it and just hope that Brock Purdy is your guy. What I would do, Zach, as an alternative, is I would give him more opportunities to show me that he's that guy. When you look at last year, they were last in the league in pass attempts. Okay. The 49ers were, and they waited to the Super Bowl to literally change that and put the ball in Brock Purdy's hands so much in that third quarter with a double-digit lead. Another Kyle Shanahan malpractice episode, right? So what I would do is I would give him more passing attempts this year to show me that, okay, he can really be that guy and let him cook a little bit more. Let me see that he's that dude and he can handle the responsibilities of having the offense run through his shoulders. You just paid Debo a couple years ago. Brandon, you may pay eventually. Yeah, show me that literally checks a lot of boxes, by having him passing the ball a little bit more. So I think that's what they should do. And if he shows that he's still that dude and he can lead them on another deep playoff run, they need to pay that man.
All right. So the other thing that really stood out to me about this section on your list was, of course, Hurts. And I'll say this. I totally understand that the Eagles really struggled, especially in the second half of last year. And Hurts did not play well. There's no doubt about it. But I do think the one thing you could say about Hurts is you could really no longer say that Sirianni is some quarterback genius. Like he's kind of been on my radar since the Super Bowl when they lost to the Chiefs. And I thought Hurts was so good in that game. And I think the Eagles could have won that game if Sirianni could have made a couple decisions differently. And I think the way he acted on the sidelines last year was pretty embarrassing. So I have my questions about him as a head coach. But the bottom line is with Hurts, I just think his situation, and I know we look at the Eagles, like they have A.J. Brown, they have Devontae Smith, maybe the best 1-2 wide receiver duo in the league. They had DeAndre Swift, a very good running back. They have a great offensive line. But I just think Hurts going from Shane Steichen, probably one of the best play callers in the league, to Brian Johnson, a guy that was so in over his head. He had no business being an offensive coordinator in the NFL. The fact that Hurts was in that situation and the Eagles started 11-1. Like I know they didn't finish the season great, but I think the fact that the Eagles, like we remember, we were watching them and they were kind of winning games early in the season, and everyone, including us on this show, were asking ourselves, like, how the hell is this team 11-1? They're just finding ways to win. You remember that Buffalo game? That's really the game that changed their season for the wrong part, even though they somehow managed to win it. I thought the fact that the Eagles started 11-1 last year, when really they had no business doing so, shows that Hurts is the real deal, and he deserves a ton of credit for that. And I know that he really struggled in the second half of last season, but I do think that he's in for a monster bounce back. I think that Look, Kellen Moore, you could have your questions about him. I was very underwhelmed about what he did with the Chargers as well. But there's no denying that he is a massive, massive upgrade over Brian Johnson. I think it's going to be good for Hurts if maybe Kellen Moore can incorporate that running game in a little bit more and really maybe turn Hurts into Dak and what he was in Dallas. They have Saquon now. I think that's going to make a huge impact. And I think Hurts is in for a bounce back season. I really do. I don't have him on my list just yet. I'll get to him soon. But I'm that's a bold statement having Hurts at 13. There's no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it for me is, I just want to see, him do it again what he did a couple years ago. Last year left a bad taste in my mouth. Obviously, I don't blame him for all of those things. Having 3 different play callers on offense, offensive coordinators.
Yeah, well, before I just want to
years.
expand on that. I don't know. Okay, this is one of the crazier statistics in the NFL. Dating back to Hurts's freshman year at Alabama, he's had, I want to say it's 11 different play callers in 10 seasons. That's wild.
I mean, it's like Justin Herbert, what Justin Herbert has been going through in his career. Scheme continuity is a real thing, and it affects you, and that's another thing that he's going through now, scheme continuity. And, I just think for me, the talent is there. A.J. Brown is one of them ones. He can make anybody look good. He made Tannehill look good. I get it. Devontae Smith is another guy who can go off as well, complementary to what A.J. Brown is bringing to the table. I get it. The RPO game, Hurts still has that down pack. The athleticism, he still has that down pack. But when it comes to strictly throwing in the middle of the field and processing, little things that really matters in the game, I think he lacks there. And I think in order for him to be a full elite quarterback, he has to develop those traits. And, I think for me, when you look at him and you compare him to a guy like Brock Purdy, and most quarterbacks, because we throw that word around like it's a branding thing, system quarterback. 95, 96% of quarterbacks in the NFL are system quarterbacks. They have to be in the right situation. However, when you look at Brock Purdy and Hurts, and I want to combine them because I have Brock Purdy a little bit ahead of Hurts, and it's not really major difference there. Like it's like 2 spots away from each other, is they are system guys as well. We know what Purdy's strengths are. He can process the field. He can see the field. He can make the throws. He can make the short throws and get the ball out with anticipation and all that. Those are the things he's good at, but he doesn't have Hurts' athleticism. Well, you look at Hurts, he's not great at processing. He's not great at throwing in the middle of the field, but he has the athleticism. So I think it all depends on the preference, and that's why I couldn't really rank these quarterbacks too far apart. I just had them 2 spots in between. Well, 1 guy in between them. And that's Kyler.
All right, Lil, I know you mentioned you had some thoughts about my list in particular, Caleb Williams and Trevor Lawrence. Let's get into it.
Yeah, we might as well get into Trevor Lawrence first, because I think for me, that season was a little bit more murkier than what you let on in your take. The way how you framed it was they were winning games. They were like, I forgot.
They were 8-3 to start, and it looked like they could get the 1 seed.
They was chasing for the 1 seed. But even then, even when they got a little bit of momentum, like last year was just rocky. Their offense never really looked in sync like how it was supposed to look. Outside of a couple explosive plays that Travis Etienne made, that offense never clicked with the passing game like that. On some like, all right, this is what I want to see entering the year. You're getting Calvin Ridley. He's back. I'm expecting a MVP caliber Trevor Lawrence. I didn't see that last year, even when they were winning games. Now they were winning games, but I didn't see Trevor Lawrence. You were MVP. What I saw was Travis Etienne. You're my friend. Let me get you the ball because you're explosive. So once they rode Travis Etienne, they started winning games. Doug Peterson decided to stop sharing the workload with him and Tank Bigsby. Let's ride Travis Etienne. He's our friend. He's our guy. Get him the ball. And once they did that, they won some games. I want to see Trevor Lawrence, if I'm going to rank him higher than where I rank him, be an MVP candidate. Yeah, winning matters. I care about winning. But it's not only about winning. It's about showing, especially in these type of rankings, that you are that dude. And me, the last couple years, I've always been high on Trevor Lawrence. I always, bought stock and bought high on Trevor Lawrence. But right now, I want to see it to believe it. The reason why I rank Trevor at 16, right, is to show me that you are one of them ones, that you are elite. So that's really why I ranked him at 16. I could have went higher, sure, I could have, but where I placed him was like, show me. And I think that you should do the same thing too. Obviously, you didn't, but I think you should want Trevor Lawrence to show you that he's an elite quarterback, and we are not just ranking him not only on just upside, because we felt that upside was here. We felt his time was here. I think we need to let him show us that first before we rank him, really in that top echelon.
Well, I think for me, that's why I ranked him high. I do expect him to have a bounce back season, and I do think he's going to show a lot of people just how good he is. It's funny, dude. Like, I do find it interesting considering how we were talking about the Jaguars at this time last year. And I know this is a year ago, right? We have
I had them going to the Super Bowl, Zach. Now you understand my frustrations because I picked them to go to the Super Bowl. I'm not sure if I picked them to win it. I don't remember that. But I had them going to the bowl. And the fact that they didn't even make the playoffs left a sour taste in my mouth. And that's why it's reflective on where I have Trevor Lawrence today.
And I understand that. Again, I think no one talks about that injury on Monday Night Football against the Bengals. I thought that was
gruesome. I mean, that was a injury. He played through it, but Patrick Mahomes played through the same injury, won a Super Bowl. If you are elite, I understand it's Patrick Mahomes, but if you're elite, then yeah, come on, bro.
And it's fair to have questions about if he's elite, but then I'll ask you two things. One, how'd you feel about Jacksonville paying him a couple weeks ago? Do you think that was the right decision? Do you think you were comfortable? If you were them, would you be comfortable doing that? And also, what I was going to say, I find it interesting that we're just automatically saying that the Texans are by far and away the best team in the AFC South. And based on what they did last season and based how CJ Stroud looked, I understand why. But I don't know. Part of me also thinks we're kind of writing off the Jaguars a little bit too early. Like, this is a team that has a really good quarterback, I think. This is a team that has a Super Bowl winning head coach. This is a team that not that long ago completed the biggest comeback in the history of the NFL playoffs. And I also think the weapons around Lawrence got better. I think that letting Calvin Ridley walk for Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis is a massive upgrade that's going to make them better. They still have Evan Ingram. I think ETN is going to be one of the best running backs in the league. I think on the defensive side of the ball, Josh Allen, he just got paid. He's one of the best defensive players in the league. So I just think this Jaguars team is still pretty talented. And I have a feeling that maybe we're just writing them off a little too early.
Look, I ain't really say nothing about the Jaguars team as a whole and where I view them in the division. Obviously, ranking quarterbacks could kind of give you some intel on how I feel about the team going into the year, but it's not giving you the full intel and detail on that. But I do believe that they are better than what they were last year. I would hope so, because last year at spots, they were very murky with their offense, and that's my issue. Games like Kansas City last year that they played at home, a team that bounced them in the playoffs, sent them home. You would think that would be the best game they played all year, and it's one of the worst games they played all year. And I understand the Chiefs defense was good, but the Jaguars defense in that game in particular was good. It was a low-scoring game. Trevor Lawrence and offense and company. Can you win the game? You know what I'm saying? They didn't show up. So now I'm looking at Trevor Lawrence at a microscope because their defense did everything to win that game, and they couldn't get their offense going to win that game. So, yeah, they could be winning games next year. But I think for me, I want to see Trevor Lawrence in particular because I'm ranking Trevor. I'm not ranking the Jaguars. I'm ranking Trevor, not Doug Peterson, not Gabe Davis and company. I'm ranking Trevor. Trevor, hello, are you there? Show me that you're an elite quarterback, and I'll rank you as such. All right, let's talk about Caleb. Right, I want to get into Caleb because I think the hype train on Caleb is going way too far. I really do. Listen, I'm hyped on Caleb as well. I am high on Caleb as well. I think he's going to come in there and produce. Obviously, I believe he is a rookie, right? Yeah, of course, right? He's going to make mistakes. But I do believe ranking him 12 is really, really crazy, especially over guys that have proven that they, could win a playoff game or could, quarterback a top of the league offense like Tua, where you have him way lower than Caleb. And Jordan Love, what he did last year, having way lower than Caleb. So I think the Caleb Williams stock, I understand you want to buy stock. I understand it's like gold. You want to get on gold now. But I do believe that you have to have a test trial and see if this guy is really legitimate in the NFL level. Yes, tape has shown you that he has the intangibles. Yes, Ryan Poles has done an amazing job building that roster, giving him a very great chance to succeed. But I do believe that we have to see something before we really go all in. I can understand ranking him 16, 17, 18, but 12, literally saying that he's elite before he even touches the field, because that's what I think of 12. The top 12 is elite status right there. You have your overall elite, your top elite, and your next elite. To rank him there without having seen him play in the preseason yet, okay, did he even win the job? I mean, clearly, right? Like, come on.
All right. Well, a couple of things on that. And I'm not saying that he's going to be like these guys, but we do have some evidence in recent years that it's not impossible for you to come in right away as a rookie and be really good, right? Justin Herbert on a bad Chargers team, his rookie year came in right away. And what? He set the all-time NFL record for most passing yards ever by a rookie quarterback. And then we see last year, CJ Stroud go into a Texan situation, which we thought at the time was pretty bad. We thought they could be one of the worst teams in the league. And all of a sudden, he has them winning games, going to the playoffs, winning the division, and winning playoff games in dominant fashion. So we do have some evidence of him, of rookie quarterbacks coming in right away and having a lot of success. And I think Caleb's situation is much better than the two guys I just mentioned. And also, I understand that this list is ranking our top 32 quarterbacks for the upcoming season and really what we think of them right now. But I'll ask you, Will, and I know this might be a little hard to answer considering, we haven't seen him play a game yet, but let's say instead of right now, we're ranking these quarterbacks based on the next 3 to 5 years. That's really, I think, a good appropriate sample size for, the quarterback position in the near future. Like, how do you compare Caleb to some of the other quarterbacks in the NFC and what their future holds? Because I think I'd have him right at the top. I think there's a reason why this guy was so highly regarded. I think there's a reason why he's one of the most hyped prospects we've ever seen. And again, I just think the situation is so good. And I think it is fair to have high expectations for the Bears. This is a team that has never had a 4,000-yard passer. This is a team that hasn't won a playoff game since 2010. They've only gone to the playoffs once since then, and they lost to the Eagles on the double doink. Like, this fan base is so hungry, and they have the talent on this team to do it. Like, there's no reason why this team shouldn't be in the playoffs. And if they're not, if there are 7 teams in the NFC that are better than the Chicago Bears, I think someone has to pay for it, and I'll be looking at Matt Eberflus, their head coach.
To me, and this is my last point, it comes down to expectations, right? And a lot of people is expecting a playoff win, a playoff visit, a Super Bowl, rookie year. I just don't see it happening. I think there's a lot of barriers that has to be broken in Chicago. Look, I was going to save this for a take for 99. I actually thought about it for this week, but then I went with another take in my mind. So I'm fine to use it today because I may come up with something for next week, and then I may not need this. So, I think there's a lot of barriers that the Bears need to accomplish. Not only the 4,000-yard passer, not only winning playoff games, right? Even though they won playoff games, but it has been a minute. It's about, okay, can you beat the Packers as well? Okay, because the last time they beat the Packers was like in 2018. You got Jordan Love, who's about to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. That's coming up. Might happen this week. Might happen when we get off the show. Can you beat Green Bay? Okay, Green Bay has owned the Packers. Green Bay has owned the Bears. Rodgers, we all know that famous clip. Can you beat Green Bay?
Yeah, well, it's funny. One thing while looking at the NFL schedule when it dropped that I was really surprised about was the fact that neither of the Bears-Packer games this year are in prime time. Like, I was shocked by that. I feel like over the years when we've watched this quote-unquote rivalry, and you're right, like the Packers have really dominated the Bears. I just feel like there have been so many times when we've watched these two teams play in prime time when the Packers are, right on the fringe of being one of the best teams in the league, and the Bears just have no business being there, and it usually would all go the same way. But now, like, I think, let me ask you this. You ranked Love over Caleb in your rankings. That's fine. But forget the quarterback situation. If you were to just look at the two rosters and compare them from top to bottom, outside of quarterback, like, don't you think the Bears have the clearly more talented roster? Because I do.
Yeah, they have the more talented roster, but I think the Packers should be favored over them.
And they are. But I just think that it's interesting, like, we're all kind of just penciling in Green Bay at either 1 or 2 in the division. We're going to get into Jordan Love in the next segment, but I can't think of a team that has bigger hype right now than the Packers. I feel like a lot of people are very high on them, expecting big things from Jordan Love. But I just look at the Bears roster, and I think it's more talented than the Packers. I really do.
Going back to my point about, at least beating Green Bay, right? Because I think there's context there. Obviously, that's not the be all end all, right? Because you could go 0-2 against Green Bay, and let's say Green Bay bottoms out in their schedule individually and who they play, and then you end up with a division. I get it. It doesn't stop and start with Green Bay. However, the point I want to make is going back to week 1 last year when the Bears played the Packers, you had Justin Fields and Jordan Love, and that was like the game that we were looking forward to. I remember we both was highly looking forward to that game. We watched that game. It was America's game of the week. And even then the hype around Fields was like, yo, Fields is about to bomb. He's about to explode. And I even ranked him high as such. But then even leading up to that game, I actually sent you a couple voice notes in the chat. And I was like, hold up, Zach. What I saw in preseason, I don't know. That's very important to bring up here. Not saying that Caleb Williams is going to be the next Justin Fields. I think he's better. There's a reason why they got off of Justin Fields. But what I'm saying is that as how high we rank Fields when we did this ranking at this time last year, we had him 12 and 13 or whatever, something to that effect. We believe a breakout was coming, but that preseason tape that I got was just enough for me to say, hold up. No, what I saw in the preseason, I do not like. And I was like, listen, Zach, he ain't going to be the 12th or 13th best quarterback in the NFL this year. And I was right. We only saw one star show up, and that was Jordan Love. Fields bottom out. So what I'm saying is, yeah, we could look at the tape from college and be like, Caleb is going to be a star, but there is a level of preseason that could, what if he bombs out in preseason? How are we going to feel about that? So that's why I think I want to see it to believe it.
No, that's fair. I was actually thinking about just how much time is Caleb Williams going to get in the preseason? He's a rookie quarterback. I'm curious to see. Yeah, I'm curious to see how Eberflus plays that. But going back to the Fields situation that you brought up, I'll admit, like, one thing I kind of overrated. I thought the situation Fields was going into last season was pretty good, at least better than it was in years past. But, like, it wasn't. Luke Getsy was a bust. He had no business being an offensive coordinator, and it's clear that those two guys didn't enjoy working together. It didn't work there. They even had me thinking that Chase Claypool was going to be some kind of impact receiver. He wasn't. Like, that just didn't work out. But then I compare that to what they have now, man, and it's like, man, like Keenan Allen is your number 2 wide receiver. Like, that's a guy that is, I think, will really help Caleb Williams. Or even
DJ Moore is the number 1.
Yeah, I mean, or Odunze could be the number 2. Like, they have 3 legit really good wide receivers, whatever way you want to rank them. I do think Moore is a legit 1. Keenan Allen, I think him being around Caleb Williams is really going to help. That's a guy that I know he didn't win a ton with the Chargers, but I don't think that had anything to do with him. That's a guy that I think will really help make Caleb better. I love Odunze. I think Cole Kmet is a good player. And most importantly, I think they got the hired offensive coordinator right. They hired Shane Waldron from Seattle, who really helped turn Geno Smith's career around there. And I think that was a good hire, and I think he's going to make it work with Caleb. And again, if the Bears don't make the playoffs, if there's 7 teams in the NFC better, then this is a failure of a season, and someone needs to lose their job because of it.
This is my last point, then I'm officially done with Caleb and potentially this topic, unless you have any more questions. We know when you're drafted number 1 overall as a quarterback, there's great responsibility. There's great pressure. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence had to go through that. Andrew Luck had to go through that. All those quarterbacks had to go to that because chances are that team is picking you that high because they need a savior. They need a Moses to lead their teammates out of bondage. So there's pressure. But with Caleb's situation, Zach, this is a question. Do you think, and can there be a case made that he has the biggest pressure out of any quarterback prospect we've ever seen? Arguably may have the best situation that we've ever seen, but could you make the legitimate argument that he has the most pressure we've ever seen a quarterback have coming into the season as a rookie?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. Thinking about it off the top of my head, you could definitely make the case for it. I would say he definitely has the most immediate pressure because, again, this is not a team that has the number 1 pick because they sucked. This is a team that had the number 1 pick because they made a great trade and they played their cards brilliantly. And I do think like Trevor Lawrence, people were calling him the best quarterback prospect ever. I don't think people have really done that with Caleb, even though he's on the same tier, he's on the same level. But that was Jacksonville, and it was clear from very early on that situation around Trevor just wasn't good. With Chicago, this Bears situation is good. So yeah, I definitely think you could make that case. But Caleb Williams, I find it interesting with him, and I think I've brought this up on the show before. When he was at Oklahoma, his freshman year, I remember this vividly. He started the season as the backup. He didn't play right away as a freshman. It was actually Spencer Rattler. And I think that'll help him. The fact that he went through a little bit of adversity, the fact that Oklahoma, they thought Rattler at the time could have been a Heisman candidate, and he just stunk to start that season. And then Oklahoma puts Caleb Williams in, and immediately you could tell, like, okay, this guy's the real deal, and he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And that was a true freshman. In a rivalry game against Texas, for anyone listening who hasn't seen this game or doesn't remember, look it up. Like the Red River rivalry, one of the biggest rivalries in college football, Oklahoma against Texas. Caleb came in off the bench, like didn't even start the game. The starter Rattler got benched, and Caleb Williams led Oklahoma to a big victory. They put up like 45 points in that game. It was a great game. So I think Caleb is a guy that's built for the moment. And Lil, before we close, I'll ask you, how would you feel about the Bears entering this season if the situation was exactly the same? They're trading for Keenan Allen. They're signing DeAndre Swift. They're signing Gerald Everett. They have a new offensive coordinator. They got rid of Getsy, but instead of Caleb, it was Justin Fields back at quarterback, and they didn't have the number one pick, because I think that's a difference. Like Chicago won 7 games last year, and they got better all around, including at quarterback. Like if they win, even if they improve that win total by a game or two, I still don't think that's good enough, because I do think going from Fields to Caleb is such a massive upgrade. Would your expectations be higher or lower for the Bears going into this season if they had Fields as their quarterback? Because for me, my expectations would not be as high if they still had Fields. And that's why I ranked Caleb appropriately.
I mean, that's a great question, to be honest with you. A very good question. I mean, look, the Bears won how many games last year? Seven games.
And they finished like 5-2. They finished really well.
Yeah, they finished 5-2. So, Fields was playing with some momentum. However, I do think that Caleb Williams, I wouldn't be as high to answer the question outright. I wouldn't have been that high on the Bears with Justin Fields, mainly because I do believe that Caleb Williams is an upgrade. If I was ranking Fields on this list and not Russell Wilson, because I believe Wilson was not starting, I would still have Caleb Williams ranked higher than Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields is not the passer that Caleb Williams has shown on film thus far, and that's why I would prefer Caleb Williams, because they're going to be a passing team with all those pass catchers that they have. Roma Dunze, Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. You want a quarterback that's going to pass the football, and his first reaction is not, let me take off and run for the first down.
I agree with that. So if they won 7 games with Fields last year and they got much better at quarterback, offensive coordinator, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3,
I get that point.
Why can't they win 10 games?
I get that point, and I understand that logic of, okay, we got better individually, but you look at the league as a whole, and the Lions got better, even though they were already good. The Packers, to me, is going to reload. So there's other factors that go into that, but individually, the Bears definitely have gotten better, and I think Caleb Williams give them a better shot than what Justin Fields would have.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, or leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.